Welcome back everyone to this Introduction to Unreal Engine course. In this video we're going to be talking about cameras and how we use them. We're also going to be looking at sequencer and a few different tracks. The way I'm going to be doing this is we're going to be focusing primarily on how these things work. So I'm not going to spend too much time on setting keyframes and stuff like that because that takes quite a bit of time. I might do a quick demo, just how to move a camera from left to right and set a few keyframes, but I will primarily showcase it here. I do that in order to keep the video from being 3 hours long because there's quite a few stuff that we need to go over, right? So first and foremost, the video that you saw at the beginning of this, well, the sequence that you saw at the beginning of this video is basically this. It's this little sequence here. It's follow. I'll just press play here. Wait, press. I'll just follow along like this, right? So characters here. That one points at her. She turns around, up, jumps down here. There's a slow motion sequence. There's some gunfire that you don't hear in the video that you saw. The sequence. We follow her. Here, slow down again, and then here she goes here and here. See, this is what the sequence looks like without cameras. So you can see why we need cameras so that it looks all cinematic and all beautiful, right? So what I have done, I've got, let me see, let me remove these actors. These ones I don't need, these ones I don't need. Demo actors and demo cameras. That's it, that's all I need. Right, we're going to be looking at all that stuff. So as we can see, we've got a camera right here behind her, and we've got a camera in front of her, right? And these cameras, this is camera, let's see, camera 1, and the other one is camera 2. And you see they have a blue line that basically tells the viewer or you exactly where they are going, right? And how they're moving. You can also focus or look through the camera if you don't have a secondary screen on your monitor, on your desk, a secondary monitor. Then what you can do is go to your placed cameras and you go to camera, this is camera 2, right? So now you've got your view through camera 2, but you also need to press this so that you can literally see the setup of camera 2. There is another way, and that's just on your sequencer. So whenever you click on these little cameras here, you just go into that particular camera. It's the same thing as what we just did here, but it just goes faster here. And you can see all these paths and all that stuff, right? So camera number 1, for example, if we were to press play, then you'll basically see the entire sequence from the point of view of camera 1. And here you'll see how she moves, this and that. Here he fires, he shoots. This is something that was not in the video or in the sequence, because what I do, or what I did basically, is I shot, I have my animations, but then just like in real life, in the studio or wherever, you basically shoot many different shots, okay? You got different type of angles, and then in editing, you basically end up choosing, oh, I'll use this one here, I'll use that one there, and so forth. So this is basically what I did here as well. See, this is a different camera shot, and then this one follows her, goes through here, and I think that one stops there. It doesn't track her anymore. We've got camera number 3, which I think is only for, no, it did follow him through here. Yes, camera 3 does all this, so follows him here. We start off with camera 3 in the sequence, then it breaks off over here, it goes here, follows her along here. Then here he fires a few rounds and then jumps. We go back to camera 3 and I think it stops there. And then 4 I believe, what was camera 4? Camera 4 was, not sure. Camera 4 was, yeah, actually only applicable, I think, from here, I think. I'm not sure. So follows her from this angle, keeps following her here, yeah, jumps, goes down. This is the shot you see in the sequence. And here it keeps following her, slows down here, and here it stayed slow. This is where we end in the video. So these are your cameras, right, when you click on them. Number 5, I'm not sure what that one is. Let me quickly click on it. Let's see. Yeah, camera 5 seems to be just a static shot. Oh yes, I remember now. Camera 5 is this one. Yes, that one. That was only created just for this particular shot. And we can also see here in the camera cuts that it's literally just that little piece here. When you go over it, when you hover over it, it says demo camera 3, demo camera 5, 4. So once we have our shots, which is the way I work, I like to create all my different shots with the cameras I follow around. And then when I open up one of these, for example, see, you have, let's go into camera 1. Right? You have lots of keyframes, right? You've got your aperture, your focal length, and your distance. So all these things I like to keyframe to keep certain things, and obviously your transform. Your transform is where your camera is located. I'll show you first a few things here so that you can see basically what I mean with all this. And that I can afterwards give you a demo with a real camera. We'll just add an additional camera and then you can look at how that's done. Right, so we follow up on here. And then let me also quickly, wait 1 second. I'm going to press G so that we don't have any distractions there. Go back into our camera view. There we go. Now you can see exactly what's going on. So it's out of focus first. That's on purpose. Then she comes into focus. We follow. We track here. Here the camera turns around, stops here. This was something I didn't. Obviously, this particular side or this particular few frames I didn't want to use because it's a bit of an awkward thing. Doesn't really happen much in film. But it was useful to have this shot afterwards, which was interesting. A little bit of a tilted shot. And I redid that afterwards again with a different aperture. And I think the focal length was pretty much the same, but my manual focus distance was different, which allowed her to be blurry and him to be in focus. But so, as you can see, there are all these little things that I track here, right? All these little, and I create keyframes for every single one of them. Here, what we'll see is that this actor is firing his gun, right? Now, how do we do that? That's also very important because this is the part that we're looking into sequencer, right? For that, we need to go to the actor itself, which is, I think this is soldier number 1. Soldier 1, and there we go. I'm going to zoom in for this so you can actually see it. Wait, let me zoom in like this. And you have different things here that are going on, right? A lot of this stuff we have seen in the previous video, or well, the one before that, where you can see how to add animations and weights. One thing that I didn't show in that video yet was that you can achieve this also by just putting 2 tracks over each other. So let me show you what I mean. So here, for example, he goes from this to jumping. He's about to jump, right? So there we go. This part I can drag in or out. If I go over it, it creates this, this overlap. Well, it's basically the same here. The only difference is that with weights you have more control because you might have different, you might have 2 animations that you want to mix together, right? So just know that you can also do that. So basically there. Okay, now going back to this, because this is the important part. What you'll notice is that I have a few things here. I have added a track, right, which was my component's muzzle. Muzzle is my particle system, that firing thing here, right? And I added that one. So, no, sorry, in Soldier, you go to your actor itself, you do add track, and then you, at the component, you take that component, which will bring this, right? Then you'll have your track. And on here, you'll have to track another thing. So this is a particle system. So Unreal will know that when you press on track here again, you'll be able to track different things like event trigger, this, that. What I wanted to have was the VFX or the effects system toggle track. You select that one and then you get this. And it's at deactivate, means that this particle is deactivated. It will activate on here. Look, when I go over it, here it changes to activate. That means show particle now. And how is this particle working? Well, this particle is basically in our blueprint, right? So if you haven't seen the previous videos, this will sound very complicated. So I strongly recommend you go and watch the previous videos on how to attach sounds and items to a character. But in your previous thing, if I were to go to content browser, let me quickly go to my, what was it, Mixamo content. Let me take this off. And it was, I think, soldier animations. No, I think I still have it just in Mixamo content. Somewhere here, yeah, this guy. All right, if I go to my blueprint, let's see, and I go to my viewport, right? See, he has this attached. This particle system is attached. This is very important. If you don't have this, this won't work. Right, so I've got my skeletal mesh. I've got my gun, which is also a skeletal mesh, and that skeletal mesh has this one attached to it, right, which is attached to that socket, and so forth and so forth. So again, watch the previous video on how to do this, and then if that's set up correctly, when you go into your sequencer, you'll be able to add this, right, and then you just basically select the activate. It will only fire when it's activated. If I were to change this, if I were to, for example, move this around, right, and say, then what's happening, see, it's going to be activated the whole time. He's shooting at her the whole time here, right? Which is not really what we want, but that's how it works, right? So it's deactivate, activate, and you do it by just putting in keyframes, right? If I wanted to activate it again later on, I just put in a keyframe and put it to activate or deactivate. Very simple, very useful, right? So that's how you do that. And because this animation also, look, I'll press play and I'll be quiet so you can hear it. This gun is basically being fired, right? And because that part, the sound, you don't see a sound track here, even though I could have done that. But I have it in my animation. So if I go to my content browser and I go to, where is this? Mixamo content, yes, it's here, and then soldier animations. Sorry, that's not the right one. The soldier animations, there we go. And I think it's the one that says, let's see. I've got one of these where he's left shooting. There we go. This one. Has this sound attached to it, right? Now I'm quickly going to press stop. Now, you'll see also a lot of information here and here. This part you know. We saw that in the previous video, right? If you don't know how to do this, this is basically adding sounds. You add notify, and then you right-click, and then add notify, and you play a sound. And then you just add it, the one that you need, right? This is different. This is because I decided to create my own animation of him firing, because I did not have that, right? I didn't have this where he's firing, right? So I did a very simple key, and you do that through here. Okay, when you can move your arm, your legs, and all that stuff, and you can set a key. I'll show you another one where it's more interesting to look at, because I did this twice in this video. Let me eject the camera really quickly, right? And let me quickly go to, sorry, let me go into my perspective. Up, this will be easier. You go into my perspective. This particular animation, there's an animation that she does here. She falls down on the floor. See, there are two moments that she falls, right? There is, let me go back to sequencer. I know I'm going all over the place, but there's just so much to explain. Right, so she jumps and she drops here, that's the standard animation that comes from Mix. No, this was not from Mixamo. This was from the animations that came with this character, right? So this is the landing, but that landing is tiny. Okay, if I were to go to, where is she? She's a rogue cyborg, right? It's a very short animation, that landing. So I knew that I was going to need for this one, a different one, or it was going to look very strange, right? This one right here, she jumps, and then here she has a pose that just stays, and here she makes a landing. This particular landing, I did frame by frame, right? It's not perfect, but it gets the job done. So she falls here, and it's much more believable than the one at the top. How do you do your own animations like this? Well, you go to the one I had. Let me quickly show you that. This one is in female mannequin, animations, female, and it is, let me see, she has, in order to do your own animations, wait, jump and two, the end two, yeah, okay, so this is the one, this is the standard jump, right? It's very short, right? That wasn't going to do it. For that big jump that she does, it was really not going to cut it. So what I did is I created my own, and you'll see here the animation. It's not very thingy, but it works for the landing, the impact, it works. Okay, let me pause this, and so basically falls, drops. It's not perfect, again, you have some knee movement there, but you don't notice that. In the animation itself, you don't notice it. Right, so she falls, and then that's all done with keyframe. So if you want to do something different, for example, I'm quickly going to show you. Say, for example, I want to move that over here, and I press a key now. You're going to see that whenever I do that, see, she does something strange. She brings in the key, and then just goes back. Do I want to save it? No. So I'm just going to close that and not apply it. But so that's how you do it. You have to save. If you did want to keep that, you save it. And like that, you can keyframe a whole. Before I forget, I have to go back. Yes. What? Yeah. See, it's now in the system. So it looks funny now. But if you did want to somehow keep this, okay, or if you wanted to say, oh, the animation has to be longer because that was the problem I was having, it wasn't long enough, you can go outside of your animation and go basically up to here, and you do append at end, and then it's going to ask you how many frames do you want to append, and you just type in your amount of frames and you get additional frames. Otherwise this red line will just stay where it is, right? So you can do a lot with these animations, right? Okay, so with that done, let's go back to, I think she's really going to do this funny jump, and if I go to sequencer, it will try to, that's going to look like a funny, oh no, she's still, okay, fine. It's because I haven't saved it, perfect, because I don't want to save that animation. All right, so with that said, let's see, what do we got? We have discussed how to add thingies, how to add your own animations, so we've done that, how to see your own animations. You can do that by keyframing. We have seen how to add your particle systems, which is very important. Let's see if there's anything else. You can add sound, but like I said, I decided to add my sound inside the animation itself, and then it will just come with it. Why is that interesting? Because in that sound cue, I have my attenuation. If you remember from the previous video, that when the sound goes, look, if I quickly were to showcase that again. So he's about to fire here, right? Let's be close to it and let's hear it for a second. Okay, we just heard it. If we go far away, and this is a repeat of previous video, but if I were to be stand here and press play again, I don't know if you heard it, it was very, very low, so you can barely hear it. That's why I wanted that. I wanted that to be automated, so I have it in my sound cue. Again, how to do that is shown in the previous video. Now, another thing, as you've noticed, I've got this here, time dilation, which is basically your slow motion effects, right? Or if you want to speed up things, which I also do sometimes. So in order to do that, we're just going to click on the camera cuts. It's the easiest one. We can have a look. There are a few moments where this happens. Here it all goes normal, normal, normal. Here it speeds up. So if we go here, you see time dilation 1, meaning, so, and how to do this, you just add a track, and it's this one, time dilation track. We already have one, so we can't add a second one, but that's where it is. So you go to track, and then you add that, and that's where you can speed things up. 1 means that it's the normal speed, right? The standard 30 frames per second. But as you go here, you'll see that I speed it up to, I think it was about 3.5. Yeah, 3.5. That's just to speed up this transition, right? This one right here. I wanted that one to go faster. All right, and then it moves along. And here we change camera. Here I do also one slowdown temporarily from, I think, just half speed to make that jump a little bit more interesting to look at. And then here I slow it down considerably, right? So I go from, I put another keyframe. Let's zoom in. That's maybe a bit too much, but let's zoom in to where this is happening. No, actually, we can zoom in even more. So you can really see how I do it. All right, so I put in one keyframe just to put it back to 1, obviously, because these ones have to stay at 1. Otherwise, it will transition again to something else. Once you get here, 1, and then here I stop it to, I put it at 0.2, and it slows down considerably. 0.2, 0.2, and we get back to here. It's still 0.2, I think. I think here I went back to speed it up, right, to make that impact landing much stronger. And then here, I think it goes back, it slows down a little bit. So it goes slow, faster again for the impact, and then slow again just so that she can get up slowly, right, for that movement here while the camera is zooming in on her. That's what makes it work, okay? If it was without this time dilation, it would never look the same, right? So jump, slow down here so you get that cool shot, and slow down again, and there we go. Okay, then, so that's how you do that. We've looked at how to slow things down. The fade, I think I've explained that in previous videos, but I'll quickly do it again just in case I didn't. It's very simple. Your fade is basically a track, and also you just do that by add track, and you add, where is this, fade track here. I already have one, so again, you cannot add it again. But your fade 1 means basically that it is fully black. It's kind of like fade in, fade out. And when you move here, you set another keyframe and put it to 0, and then you've got your fade out. It's quite useful if you're going to jump in between scenes and so forth, right? So I think with that, I think we have covered the sequencer side of things, I believe. We can look at a camera now, importing a camera and seeing exactly how we can play around with cameras and explain a few things on the cameras itself. Right, so let's do that. We've already focused on the sequencer. We talked a little bit about cameras in the beginning, but then I went off on the sequencer stuff, which is important. Because just like all these tracks here, you've got actually a lot of things. You've got your audio that you can also add as if it were like a sound on top of it. I didn't do that here. I did that in the editing afterwards in post. But you could do that right here as well. If you wanted it in the actual video here, you can do that here. There's so many different things. There are events that you can trigger, like explosions and stuff like that, which is done with that particle, like what I showed you. That particle event. Where you trigger on and off. So because the one we had here with soldier 1 was because the particle was here. It's part of the soldier, but nothing's stopping you from, for example, if you wanted to have an explosion here, for example, you can just bring in from your content browser somewhere. Where do I have? I don't have explosions, but I do have particles, just in general. Particles here, content. So for example here, if I wanted to have an explosion here at any point in time, right, let's quickly bring that in. It's the exact same system, right? You just put in your explosion, and then once it's there, you bring it into your sequencer, and you just say at that point in time, so I'll just quickly show you. Let's track the explosion. There's not really going to be an explosion, but let's just pretend. Let's say somewhere here, for example. And like I said, it's your effects system toggle that you need to activate or deactivate. Right, so let's say that here it's not active, and you keyframe that, and from here, like the next keyframe, for example, so we just move by 1 or 2 or something like that, let's say here, and we say we put another keyframe, let's see, do we have that? Yeah, and then we put it active, right, we activate it here, and then that means that, see, here it just goes off. And because it's a one-shot, I mean, I'm not sure if it repeats or not. Yes, it does. So you just say somewhere, for example, here, and you say deactivate, and that's it. You've got your, I think we don't even need this one, this particular one. You can just delete that, right? That's how you do it. If you have a moment where there's going to be explosion, that's how you do it. Very simple, right? And then, yeah, so let's delete this one. And we don't really need that explosion anymore. I'm going to delete it as well. But it's just to show you how to quickly add events like that in your track. Right? And with the soldier, it's a little bit more complicated because it's linked to the gun and it has to follow the gun. That's where that is interesting. And you'll see it basically because I had other actors. This one, for example, actor number 3. Let me see. This guy, for example, still has it activated, right? Because that's part of the blueprint, right? In that blueprint, I have this one and all that stuff still activated on these two. These two actors I didn't end up animating at the end. Okay, perfect. I think we've covered the sequencer side of things. Now let's quickly add a camera, okay? Because there's a lot of things that are happening here. Like I said, there is this camera sequence here, for example. This is the one we follow here. But, of course, let me zoom out a bit, like so. There is also, for example, I think it was it camera 2? I don't remember. Wait, let me quickly jump into camera 2. No, it wasn't camera 2. I think maybe 3. Let's jump back to camera 3. Yeah, there's another character that is not being followed up, basically. And that, let me just get out of here. So if I click that again, I just jump out. But this guy, which wasn't tracked, he does all kinds of stuff. Right? He's jumping, running, and he also goes down the stairs as soon as he realizes that she is running off. So what we can do here is maybe quickly create a camera that follows him. Just a very simple camera, okay? We're not going to do any magic because, like I said, that takes time if we want to do it right. So how do we quickly add a camera? Very simple. We've got 2 different cameras. You can either type in camera, and you've got this basic camera, which I would not use. Let me quickly go here. Let me quickly show you. Let's bring them up. Oh yeah, I have to press G so that we can actually see our cameras. So this one right here, this blue one, I wouldn't use it. Okay, I wouldn't really use this camera because that's a good camera for video games. Like if you're gonna track your player from behind or something, that's great. But it's not a cinematic camera. You don't have things for your aperture and stuff like that. So let's not use that one. Let's delete it. What we want is a cine camera actor, which you will also be able to find just here in, where is it? Cinematic and cine camera actor, right? So you take this one and you have it located here, right? And this one looks much more cinematic, which is great. And you can already see that it has interesting features to it, right? So I'm going to quickly add that to my demo cameras. So right here, and I'm going to rename it really quickly. Here we go, edit, rename. Let's call this demo cam 06, I believe. Yeah, demo cam 06. And I'm also going to add it to the sequencer because we kind of need the sequencer in this sense, right? So we have it now here under 5, right? So demo camera 5. I'm going to click on this camera so I focus on it so I can see where it is. And all my movement now will be inside this camera. Right, let's quickly do something very simple. Okay, we're just going to track this guy going down the stairs or something. There are many different ways we can do this. We can pretend it's a handy cam like we've got now. I'm also going to slow down the camera speed a bit so it's easier to navigate. All right. So let's see. We've got something simple. I'm not going to do something too fancy. All right, let's say we were, if it really was a camera, some guy standing on the stairs, a cameraman, would be somewhere here maybe, and then walking backwards or something. All right, so you could, for example, here, add in a keyframe. Right, so that's important. You put a keyframe for your transform, which is your location. Right, and then let's move the camera down. Let's see, where is he? He went down here. Oops, down here. Let's say the cameraman walked down as well and ended up standing here somewhere. The good thing here, obviously, is that you can play around with exactly where you put it. So if I were to keyframe it again, and I'm not keyframing any of this yet, that's maybe later. First, let me just do the movement of the camera. Right, so cameraman walks down, follows here. Let's say he moves, let's try to make an interesting shot somewhere here. Moves a bit. You have to be careful not to move too much because then it will look very unrealistic in your movements. So this is basically how I like to plan out my shots. I first just do the movement, and then later on I focus on the focal length and the aperture and all that stuff. So for example, here he's focused here, perfect. But here, for example, I want him to keep looking at him. They're very simple ways of doing this as well, instead of keyframing, and I'll show you that in a second as well. So here, for example, and we follow him, you have to make sure that he stays on point. So here it's good, this shot is good, but here I still want him to stay focused on him. That's very important. It's very dark here. We need additional light here. I might just quickly add in a light just to make this scene a little bit more bearable. See, if you're going to be a filmmaker, you have to pay attention to absolutely everything. You really have to, if you're going to direct a shot or something, you have to make sure that your scene is well lit, that it's interesting to look at, that you've got your thingies. Let me also put this to movable so that we don't have to rebuild the light. So let's just quickly pretend, just for the sake of it, here, and go back into our camera. That's a bit better. At least we got something to work with. And he steps into the light, and then, yeah, it's a bit too bright, maybe 4 or something. Could do something like that. Comes in, there's some light, and then if you wanted to, so now we're back at our camera. Okay, let's select our camera. Camera 6. Let's follow up on this. So I think he's going to, I think somewhere here. I'm not sure exactly where. Yeah, let's move. And you can just be careful, obviously, with the plank. So you might have to do this. And then we'll work around somehow. Or we could just go follow him. That might be easier. Might be a bit more realistic to do. All right, we just follow him here and say, okay, I like this shot, for example. And so I think in terms of like keyframes, and then later on I fix everything. And then, for example, I keyframe it again, right? And then just see what happens. It's going to look horrible at the first shot, of course, because you're not really tracking him. If you did want to track him, there's a very simple solution for that. In our camera, here, we are in Demo Cam 6. We have the option of, look at tracking settings, right? You can open this up, and you can say, unable look at tracking, right? Let's do that. And now it's going to say, okay, what do you want to track to, right? This is quite an important question. Let me jump out of the camera really quickly, and so I can quickly select him. I can say, like, okay, I want you to track Soldier 02, right? So now if I go back to camera 6, let's see, of course he has an offset, so because it is focused on where the pivot point is, and the pivot point of this actor is not at the same place, because there was an animation that was elsewhere. So if you do have this, very simple, don't worry, you have your relative offset that you can fix. So you can, for example, put your X here, for example, your Y, I think that would be fine where it was, but it's particularly interesting, the Z-axis, right? So I'd say somewhere like there, I'd say we can double check. And let's follow. No. Okay, so it does something strange here, exactly because of the pivot. This will not work with this character. Why? Because this actor has there was an animation where the pivot point ended up in the back. So let me show you. But it does normally work, and it's interesting to do that. I'll show you what I mean. So this actor, see the pivot point is there, and that is because one of the animations that I brought in from Mixamo, see, it's all perfect here, right here, but as soon as this one comes, the pivot point is detached from the character, and then to save time, I just left it as it is. I'm pretty sure there is a way to retarget the pivot point and put it back, I assume, but that's because the animation was not in place. So when you export from Mixamo, you have to make sure that your animations are in place. Otherwise, it will move away from your pivot point, and then, yeah, I'm sure there is a way to fix it. I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't know how. And it would have taken a bit too long to figure that out before the video, because I really wanted to release this video as well. So, but again, it's an introduction course, so that's not an issue. But if you did want to track like what we did, okay, number 6, because that's why we're here basically, we can do that. Okay, we can track that, and then it will track the character as long as the pivot works. I'll maybe show you with another actor. I'll be where the pivot is actually fine. So I'm gonna turn off the tracking, and then you'll just do what we had in the original plan. See, like right here, and you can just manually follow it up. So where's the camera? Let's focus back on the camera. Here, for example, so what I'll do in order to track, I'll just basically do this instead. If I wanted to say somewhere here, I can try to follow it up a little bit better and say rotate camera, something like that, and then it will, let me set in that keyframe. There we go. So let's see, it follows a bit better. Yeah, it follows along. For some reason, oh yeah, of course he disappears here. Yes, that's what happened, of course, because it's no longer keyframed. But you get my point. This is basically how we can follow things up, right? So that's where we put in our keyframes, and then we can test them, right? So we say, okay, let's go down here. There you go. Here it slows down because of another animation. Remember, at the top we have a time dilation going on, so a slow motion effect. And what else you can keyframe, which is very important, is the aperture, focal length, and distance. So for example, here, let's start here, right? You can also jump in between your keyframes just by pressing here. So say for example, here we wanted to keyframe all this, right? And we want to, for example, the manual focus distance is at 10,000 right now, right? So maybe we want to change that to, I don't know, let's say 250. Nope, let's see. Let's say something like that, 150, or maybe a little bit less. Let's say 130, right? So what we're going to see is that the background is starting to blur out, and our aperture, if I do this, it blurs out even more, right? And we have our focal length, which we'll leave at 35 for now. In order to understand exactly how these things work, I'm not going to do that now because it takes quite a while to explain all that. Wait, let's put this back to I think it was at 2.8, right? We could start with that for now, and then move over here. As soon as he gets maybe somewhere here, you might want a different type of setup, right? So you might want your focus. See, if I move it, it will automatically put in a keyframe. You might, for example, want to focus only on him. So you do your manual focus to, let's say, 100, right? We can keep the aperture at 2.8, or you can play around with it. Here, obviously, because it's virtual, you can do apertures that don't really exist. But you can play around with this. Let's say 2.8 was still fine, but I'll leave the manual focus like this. And the focal length, I'll leave it like this as well. So what will happen is now that as we move along, the background will blur out, which is kind of what I want. Here it stays blurry, and I can stay focused on him. Here it's the background stays blurry. Obviously here he's gonna blur out as well. So if you wanted him to be in focus again, all you have to do is add the keyframes here again. But this is very important. This is part of it. So the way I work is I put in my keyframes first for the transform, and then I play around with all this. So for example, here you can also, instead of following him, which doesn't always happen, people can also just use a focus, like your focal length, right? So you can say, for example, here it's fine, up to here maybe, right? You put your focal length, you say, yeah, I want it at the exact same focal length, but starting here, maybe you wanted to follow him up to wherever he disappears. And here you can, for example, increase your focal length, for example, or lower it if you wanted to have this effect where, let's say 20 or something, which will create a wide lens. So you can do basically whatever you want, and it creates a strange effect, right? So he walks around, and then it's like he's being, like he shoots off into the distance because your focal length changes there. I wouldn't really do that, but it's just to give you, like, show you how you can do that. Right. So that's the important thing about cameras, and there's a lot here as well, obviously, that you can do. Things that we haven't looked at cameras, or I believe we haven't, I'm not sure. Yes, we have. Either ways, so moving on, what we can also look at are different type of ways of working with cameras, right? So we have this camera that we have here, this number 6. But what we haven't seen yet, for example, is we have these really cool, if we go to cinematic, we've got this camera rail, and we have this crane, like in real life, right? So this is quite interesting because on a rail, for example, let's play with tracking some actors again. Let's say we wanted to track these actors here, right? We could just install a rail. We could say, let's put a rail here, right? And let's rotate that rail. Let's put it over here. Let's do a 90 degree. I don't have my thingy on, so I'll just do -90. I should put my snapping on again. And here, for example, see this little thing here, you can keep on extending that, right? So if I move it, it extends basically the rail. And what we want is to, like if for example, this is a very simple rail, right? So this one, for example, it's basically a rail with a curve on it. And you can basically just make the rail go this way, right? Or you could, what we could do technically is, let's do that. And then press Alt or Option key and extend again, and then you'll have a subsection, right? Because this one now, if you pay attention, you can move this and it will curve the rail, right? Quite useful. Also, this part here, obviously I can use that to curve. It's literally like a curve. Okay, and you can say like curve here, for example. You can move it up, down. It's like a real rail, right? And basically what I'm creating is a camera rail, like in real life. Let's pretend that this one exists. And I'll move this one a little bit this way, not too aggressive. And then again, here, when you go back to here, you can Alt, you can create so hold in Alt so that you can create a bend. You can continue bending this thing here, select, and continue bending. So you've got your rail like this, right? And what we can do is we can add a camera to it, right? So let's place another camera. Let's put this one over here, move it up a bit. Let's see. Let's speed up the camera movement now. Set it to 3, for example. Okay, up, up, up. And let's rotate the camera 180. There we go. We can put the camera, we're going to try to put the camera basically where the rail is, right? So let's move sideways a bit and say, let's pretend this camera was linked to this rail in this way, for example, right? Like in real life, it would most likely be somewhere here. Right, let's move it back a tiny little bit to give ourselves a little bit of something to work with. right? Not a perfect placement for a rail, but it's interesting that you can just see it. All right, if we wanted this camera to be part of that rail, we can just select the camera in the outliner and let go here, right? So now it's attached to the rail. So in my rail, I've got the current position on rail, which is if I move this, right, the camera will move. See, camera moves, right? And it's because it's parented to the rail. So we can also obviously add that into our sequencer. We add that into sequencer, and now we've got a camera rail that we can, where is this? We can track the current position. That's what we want. Current position on rail. There we go. And we've got the position here. So for example, we can say we start, let's quickly keyframe that, and we move around. Let's also look through our camera. Let's quickly do that. So this is, we can do that here. Remember, place cameras, this is number 16, and go through here. So I can actually see what we're doing. And I think it will not let me, let's see if I can, there we go. Okay, so it's linked here, so it's going to walk around, and I think, I don't remember where it was, but let's quickly just move the position on the rail. It will follow, 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 follow. It will do this, and let's just say, yeah, at some point it's going to reach number 1, right, which is the ending of the rail always, right? Let's add that, and then here we can choose where we want that thing. If we want it to be somewhere here, something a little bit further down the line. But what it's doing basically, it's going down the thing. Now, of course, the camera is just pointed forward, right? So that's not really what we want. So we're going to go to our cine camera, and we're going to try to, this time, enable tracking. This time we're going to do it right. I'm going to quickly eject out of the camera for 2 seconds. There we go. Eject, and where are you? Let me quickly press escape. Where's my actor? Here's my rail. Yes, this time. I think, yeah, I moved the camera by accident. Okay, let's undo that. Undo, undo. There we go. Let's quickly say that we want to enable tracking, and this time we want to track the soldier, right? Now, his pivot point is on the floor, so he's just going to focus on the shoes. We don't really want that. So again, what I told you last time is that you can add a offset, right? So you look at track settings, and you can add a offset right here. Let's see, right here, right? Most likely on the Z axis. So if you want to focus on the face or something like this, now we're tracking the actor a little bit better, and we might want to rotate around the, well, because it's tilted, we'll do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. There we go. I don't think we'll need this. We can just leave it like that. And put the Y in something like that. Say you want to track him, something like that. All right. And normally, hopefully, let's see. Yeah, it will track more or less the right way. And at the same time, it will follow the rail, right? And it will track here, of course, because remember the pivot point changes. So it will stay there. It'll go off the pivot point. So that's one thing that you can do, work with camera rails. And then there's another demo that we haven't looked at yet. That is another cool feature, and that's a crane, right? You can also use a crane. And in order to do that, it's the same system. So we build in a crane right here. They're really fun cranes because they can give you really cool shots. So let's quickly rotate and do something like 180. I'm pretty sure a crane wouldn't really be here. But once you have your crane, you can, here you've got your pitch, so you can move your pitch up and down, and you've got your yaw, which will allow you to rotate, and obviously the arm length, right? So this is very useful, again, if you want to set up particular like camera setups and all that stuff. Let's quickly attach a camera to this as well, right? We're going to quickly add another camera. There we go. Let's quickly bring this camera up, rotate it 180 as well, so that it follows the crane. Bring this one more or less where the camera would be relative to the crane. Let's quickly look. Yeah, more or less. You can always pretend. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there we go. So a little bit that way, not much. Okay, and I'm going to parent this to my crane, right? So again, I use in the outliner, just select it and drop it on top of the crane, and now it's linked, right? The good news is that now, when I go to my crane, all right, let's quickly select the crane. There we go. When I move my crane, so let's say the pitch, bring it up, see, it follows along, right? And again, here it's interesting to track on this camera. So we have this camera and tracking settings, let's say enable, and we want to track soldier 2. And like this, we don't have to look for it. I think there would be soldier 2 somewhere now. Is it? If I do this? No. Then I'll have to do it the other way around. Wait 1 second. Where are you, buddy? Right now you are right there. So, oh, it's because it's, yeah, so there we go. Okay, so he's tracking that as well. So again, same system. Just going to track on the crane, move it around. Again, you see that he's not he's focusing on the foot because, again, it will always focus on the pivot point, right? So you have to make sure that your position is, like the tracking position is interesting to look at, not the feet, right? So for example here, but the good thing, like I said, is on the crane itself, you can also put in the crane and animate the crane. So we were to import the crane, let's quickly do that. And here again, you've got your pitch, your yaw, all that stuff that you can see. You can, the ones that you want to follow, right? So for example, the yaw control, for example, right? You can track that. I think it's right here, the pitch. So here, if you move it, you can say, I want it here, or I want it there. And let's try to look at it from here so you can actually see it happening. Where is this thing? Oh, over here. There we go. So the camera is basically doing this. Right? It's very high up in the sky. And it has a bit of an offset, so it does something funny like this. But all these things you can change here. Right. Also, so we had the crane. We also want to track the yaw, and the arm length would be useful. Right. You do the crane arm length, and then you've got the 3 most important ones, and you can focus on them. Right. So, for example, here, you start off here, and you can say, okay, the arm length. Let's put it somewhere here. The pitch can be somewhere here, for example, and the yaw, let's see, maybe do something like this, right? Just for the sake of it. And it's pretty fun to use a crane because it creates really good thingies, right? So it creates nice camera movement, right? So here, for example, you go up to here, and we'll stop somewhere here, maybe, right? And here we can choose to change the yaw, for example, so it will most likely change here. We can move it up to, I don't know, somewhere here. See, and it automatically adds a keyframe. The arm length, we can try to extend it out a bit. And the pitch, we can, this would most likely break the roof in real life, but it's just so that you see what happens, right? So see, the camera is moving, and obviously here it's up to you to play around with it. I mean, it's not a very interesting shot. I think it actually does a 360 or something. This is something really strange here. Let me quickly see from far. I think we did something, yeah, really, really awkward. So we might want to, this yaw here, we might want to change that. I think is because in the background, let's put it back to, like, say 30 or something. And then it will still move, as you can see, right? So it will move, it will track, and all of these things. And like I said, you can play around with the focus, which will work. This one, I think, will work a bit better now because we have a clear foreground. And again, the focus would be here, focus settings. You say tracking, actor to track. Obviously, I chose a very good place to do that. Track, yeah, there we go. I can see it now. And this is actor number 2. So now it would be tracking the soldier, and that will focus on the settings, right? So it will always keep him sharp, and all the rest. We don't really have much of a foreground to unsharpen all that stuff, but see, these are things you can also do, right? So there you go. I think we covered pretty much, I mean, the basics of cameras for sure. What did we look at? We looked at, let me quickly go to the cameras. We looked at how to import a camera. We looked at how to play around with the aperture, focal length, the manual focal distance. We looked around at how we can keyframe these things. We know that we can put them in different type of states. And let's see what else. We looked at how to add a crane, how to add a rail. So in the rail, we looked at how we can, let me quickly get out of the camera. We looked at how we can move the rail and modify the curve of the rail, which is interesting because here's a little tip that is quite useful. You don't necessarily need to put a camera in there. You could also put a person walking, by the way. Quite interesting, right? So someone that's running and you want them to run on a curve, it actually works because the rail is never shown in your render. So that's some food for thought. You could use that as an idea. Like when you have a car or something, because you can also make the camera or the actor follow the path of the curve plus the direction. So that's useful. Remember that. We looked at using a camera crane, and we looked at a whole bunch of stuff. We looked at how to add a fade, how to slow down things. We looked at the settings of a camera, the basic settings, how we can change the camera settings. Like if we were to go here, for example, we looked at the film back, that we can change that to any different type of setting. How to make it a 2:1, for example, aspect ratio. You put that to 24, this to 12, for example, you got a different aspect ratio. And we've got all these lens settings, your focal length, an f-stop, and all that stuff. It's all in there. And so there you go. Here we have the sequence once again. Walking around, this was the standard one that we showed, where everything is edited nicely and music has been added and stuff like that. And there we have it. So that's cameras for you. That's the sequencer for you. There's quite a lot that we covered today in this particular video. I strongly recommend that you dive in further online and stuff like that, because there's so much more to discuss about cameras, about the sequencer itself. And that's it for this video. In the next video and the last video of the course, because it's going to be a bit of a bonus video, I wasn't originally planning on doing this, but I've decided to add it anyways, is we are going to be talking about these two, so landscape and foliage, so that you can create your own cool mountains and play around with trees and create your beautiful natural landscapes. So we'll see that in the last video of this course, so that you have a pretty much all-round good solid introduction to the Unreal Engine. So there you go. I hope you guys liked it, and I will be seeing you guys in the next one.